Back with another episode of Keeping Current with Kansas City. This is Thad Bell from the Kansas City Soccer Journal. With me as normal, Daniel Sperry, Kansas City Star, uh, looking very statesman-like today.
That's a great dad joke, dad pun, as we were talking about the dad jokes and bad jokes today at Sporting's training. Obviously, you folks cannot see my shirt at the moment, but statesman like uh, fits with the fact that all 50 states and the outline of the greater 48, lower 48, what is it called?
The
I forget.
continental United States. How about that?
Yes, there we go. Thank you. The continental United States is on here as well. So, and it was kind of like a 4th of July polo. I don't know. I got it cheap. Thank you, going, gone. You may not sponsor us, but we'll take a sponsorship if you're listening somehow.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, we'll gladly mention you if you throw us some clothes.
they practically do if you go in there. It's dirty for everything.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe not. All right. It was kind of entertaining at practice day, though, because everybody was trying to find different states on Sperry, and he was feeling very awkward.
I was standing around like 5 different people, including like Tim Melia, Brian Bliss, like a few others, just
Yep.
walking up and being like, okay, where's this state? Where's this state? And it's like, please stop touching me. Oh,
Okay. There's
any,
our inappropriate moment for the podcast. All right. Let's dive in. This is about Kansas City Current, not about you.
thank goodness. This is much.
Yeah. All right. Last week has been very interesting for the Current. Uh, got the draw down in Houston, got a very interesting travel pattern to Seattle and then returned home to Kansas City. Um, let's just kind of dive into that whole travel thing though, right off the bat, man. That was a huge rainstorm down in Houston, 6 hour, well, 4 hour delay, 6 hour game. Uh, it was immense, and they, of course, missed their flights, missed hotel reservations, et cetera, all the other things that go with it, food, practice places, all of that stuff. What did we learn about the team from that like experience?
Well, I think Vlaco and Lowe put it pretty like clearly. Like, I think Vlaco did a really good job of being the one to be the voice of complaint and reason and all this, because I think the whole situation is from 2 weeks ago, Vlaco was hot about the schedule, about this upcoming schedule, and it turned out to be absolute hell for them. And I think that's the hard part, is like he could see just the issues, the potential issues coming, and it turned out to be one of the worst possible scenarios for the Current in this whole travel schedule. And I think so. The fact that Vlaco won, I think we learned very quickly that Vlaco is going to stand up for his players and is going to kind of be a part of that group that is going to push the league to be better. The schedule, we went over it, I think, once on this pod already, but the fact that, they went on the road to Houston to a team that had uh, better rest by one day. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal. But then go from Houston to Seattle to play against a team that didn't have to travel and had 2 extra days of rest.
Yep.
That's just barring the actual, but that's barring any of the travel scenarios. That's just if everything goes right. That's still what they have to deal with. And then they have to fly back home again. All commercial flights have to fly back home to Kansas City to face a team that didn't play in the middle of the week and is traveling from North Carolina out here. That does not had zero disruptions to their travel stuff. So when you throw that, Flacco was already complaining about that. Then you throw the travel chaos in the midst of it. We learn that he's going to stick up for his players, and we learn that he's going to go to bat for them. We also learn that they are a very professional and well put together group. They have a good head on their shoulders. Nobody let the situation, nobody else was tweeting through it. or Instagram complaining through it. All the players by the most part, saw, photos of, I think it was even like once the current landed, like that night, photos of like Haley Mason, Lou Barnes meeting up for coffee out on a walk. There's they just took everything in stride. And I think those are the kinds of things that, like, you look at the group and you see, wow, there's a mentality that is really strong. There's a lot of talk about mentality in soccer teams in Kansas City. This one's the
Yeah.
polar opposite right now. This is a very, very strong mentality. They don't care about what they're going to go through. They don't care about what you're going to put them through. They're just going to go out there and be their best. And I think that really is what we learned about just how strong, how deep the mentality of this team is, I think, right now. And I think, you know, personally, I thought this was a team that had a really good mentality in 2022. Um, I thought last year a fair amount of players involved in it. The mentality it devolved so quickly because of just how chaotic everything was from the get go. But this is a group that we've seen from the beginning of the year be very determined about their buy-in to everything. And I think, we learned, we already knew this team had a strong mentality, but I think we really learned just how tough they are, how mentally tough they are, how motivated they are, and kind of the level that they are at compared to anyone else in the league at the moment. I think shows, and we can kind of dive in at some point. We'll dive in for sure later. The result on Sunday, but I think even then, Sunday's performance underscored all of that to the 10th degree, because it was incredibly impressive to see how they handled just this whole chaotic thing from the get go. And we're able to, even Lowe was talking about the fact that their flights canceled before the Houston game, and they had players strung out all over the place trying to get into Houston because of all of the issues. So before that game, they already had chaos going on, and they still kind of put in the performances that we saw, in that game, in the Seattle game, in the middle of all of that, and tacked on a third game that was just as dominant in its own way.
Yeah, and I just would like to clarify, while we highly praise them for their mentality and strength of character and all of that stuff, I can't say that nobody else in the league has that. We haven't seen the examples of them having to go through things like this yet. So I'm just gonna give the other teams a little credit.
No, everyone else is weak. I'm just kidding.
Well, that's what you're making it sound, man. I mean, like, there's some other good teams out there that are doing good things, but
Sure.
just all of it together, like you said, the travel to get there, the bad schedule, which has been analyzed to death in the past couple weeks, that no other team in the league has that bad of a schedule, had that bad of a schedule. I mean, obviously, something could happen later where games have to be moved or something that could change, but no team had that bad of a schedule. And to come out of it with no losses, uh, better attitude than when they went into it. I mean, I would say better attitude, but a better attitude because I know from personal experience, when you've been with a group of people that go through adversity and you come out the other side with success, you're a better group for it. You
Yeah,
may not like it, but you're a better group for it.
yeah.
Uh, just the flight when they got out of Houston, they were they were allowed to have a charter flight. They got out of there, but it had to stop in Denver for fuel or to make sure they had enough fuel or something. And there was tons of turbulence there that Lowe said they were all singing together to stay together, stay strong.
Yeah.
I'm not going to imitate how she sang, but you're the
No,
musician.
I am the musician, but there's a reason why I play drums. I don't sing.
All right.
Or if I play trumpet, then I have something else in front of my mouth doing the noise making for me. And what I'll go back just quickly to clarify. I know you said that, obviously don't know this about every other team in the league. But I feel like I've seen my fair share of complaints about travel
Yeah.
situations from other players in the league. And kind of knowing that just how bad this situation was compared to some of the other ones that other players and teams have been through. Have been kind of tweeting through their feelings and or Instagramming through their feelings, all these kinds of things. Like the bit for everybody to state, like, there was not one complaint through it all. and I think that was impressive. I think there's another angle to that too, um, that the current are better set up than anyone else in the league to fight through that.
It's yeah, they were. I know at the same time that Vlaco was talking after the Houston game about how they've missed their flights, their hotels, and et cetera, and all that stuff. People behind the scenes had already actually taken care of some of that or all of it. So these things were happening. They were already getting stuff straightened out. The owners had stepped in, like, yeah, here's the money for charter flight. All the things that had to happen
Yeah,
happened.
yeah,
And Vlaco also probably uh he's a not a stupid guy. He also probably said, let me take the heat for saying all these things.
yeah.
And
I think too the like I think the point that I was getting at is like the current the current recognized like obviously there was a lot of logistical, a lot of communication issues that have taken place over the last couple of years. There was a lack of organization, even down to equipment staff and all these other things that were going on that I've heard complaints about for the last 2 years. The current came in like when Vlaco came in and he hired his staff. Now, sure, we had this issue with the medical guy, and
right.
that very quickly took care of itself in the way that it should have. But like they hired like 3 times the size of staff that they had
Yeah.
beforehand. Like
Experienced
they're
staff.
experienced staff. They from league office, from US soccer. I mean, like they went in like there are they what last year was a one person position in terms of like travel and coordination is what I was told, kind of behind the scenes. It was a one person position for the last 2 years, turned into a 3 person position to manage all of that. The moment the investment in resources, the investment, you go to this thing with the stadium and the training center and all this stuff. All the players have talked about this whole thing of like all we have to do really as professional athletes is focus on the soccer like every other professional athlete is afforded the ability to. And this is what I mean by what I said there is that the current are set up to withstand the issues that they withstood better than anybody else because that infrastructure and that mindset is in place from the top down. It goes from owners to Vlaco and Cami to that we are going to be the best in every single thing that we're going to do. And if we're saying we're the best in something and we're not, then we're going to try and figure it out and fix it. And I know they all catch heat for a lot of different things, but in reality, what they've done this year to really take care of players and make sure that they are being cared for at the highest standard, I think shows in the chaos of what the team went through in the last week because of the fact that the players were set up for success at every single level because everyone else took care of the chaos and made sure that the players didn't have to deal with the burden of that chaos. And that's like the bare minimum for a professional sports team. You didn't hear, and so that's why we didn't hear any complaining because I think it's in there too in the post game comments. Flacco told the players, "My staff is going to take care of this.
Yeah.
Do not worry about any of this. We will do our best. Keep it up."
Yeah.
And
Not that everything will be perfect, but we will do everything we can to make it right in
correct,
every way possible.
correct. And the players adhered to that. And you get the scenes that you do on Sunday night where you have Lowe and Davinia sitting there laughing, talking about the crazy stories of all this chaos that they went through in the last week. They do so with the victory in hand at home, and they do come out of it unscathed, unbeaten still. And they allowed, in reality, this team has allowed 2 goals in the last 4 games. A team that was leaking and hemorrhaging goals through the beginning of the year, and so that to me just shows like where this team is at and all this, and how much they may have been better set up for success through that situation than anyone else in the league because of the way the organization is approaching everything.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing any of that. But it is amazing how all the complaints that we have heard over the last couple of years about various different things, rookies and uniforms and communication and food and all these different things seem to have been either handled or put in place in a better way. Now, there's probably still some things that we can discuss in some future pods about that, but it was just a really well handled by the Current to make the best of this last situation.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. All right, we're going to come back and talk real soccer after this. We're going to take a small break. There'll probably be some commercial, hopefully, because then maybe I'll make 3 cents this week. And we'll move on. And we're back. Segment 2. All right. Talked about travel, weather, all that good stuff. Soccer. Last 3 games. Well, you mentioned in the last segment they've only given up 2 goals in the last 4 games. In the last 2 games, they have had shutouts. Uh, with all the travel issues, I'm just going to over the last 3 games. 1-1 in Houston with that big weather delay. 0-0 in Seattle, and then 1-0 back at home against the Courage.
Yeah. And if you look back at it, really, in all 4 games, there's only been 1 goal scored on them that has come through a run of play, something that, happened and was maybe not quite their that was maybe not their fault, but something that they were unable to defend.
Yeah.
The goal that happened in the Houston game should never have happened. Everyone acknowledges the mistake that happened in that game. We talked about it too
Yes.
on the last podcast as well. But like in reality, I think obviously you went over the score lines. The biggest thing that jumps out to me, especially over the last 2-3 games, is just how few clear-cut chances the opponent is creating on them. And they were 3 decent opponents.
And they were. And then adding in all the travel and all the other factors into it, that could have very easily been 3 losses or 2 losses and a draw. I mean, it could have very
Rotation
easily been.
there's rotation along the back line too. I mean,
Yep.
look at the Seattle game. You have Reagan starting that game at left back, I believe, or right back. Don't kill me if I'm wrong. But
Outside back. Let's just say that.
one of the fullback spots because she certainly wasn't playing center back. But I think that was just kind of looking at the way they, as you see, yeah, Reagan started out at right back. You get Stina playing all of the match against Seattle and all of the match against North Carolina. Same with Gabrielle Robinson, 80 French back-to-back clean sheets. I mean, just a lot of impressive defensive work. I mean,
Yes.
just go ahead because I'm going to look at stats and I should probably
In
start
the
talking.
in the first 4 games, they gave up 4 goals, 1 goal, 2 goals, and 1 goal, and then 2 more against Bay City. So that's in the first 5. And then in these last 4, they've given up a total of 2 goals. But also, some people like, some people hate expected goals. The expected goals against, so what the opponents should have scored in the last 4 goals in the last 4 games against the Current was 1, 0.8, 0.2, and 0.3. So that's not even a fluke that they were giving up a lot of shots and they just managed to save them or got lucky. That's that's minimizing the chances of the opponents against some, again, pretty decent opponents with some pretty good players. Maybe those teams aren't all going to be at the top of the table at the end of it, but with all things considered, that was a really good defensive effort these last 4 games, really 5.
Yeah, we are talking in the last 3 games. Last 3 games, the Kansas City Current have only allowed 6 total shots on target.
Yeah.
6 shots on target. That means 80 Franch has made 5 out of 6 necessary saves in the last 3 games. That when you're at a point where you're only putting your goalkeeper through that much work, that's just one, stellar defense, and two, really impressive offense. I mean, even then, that's how many shots they led on target in the game against Angel City, and they did that over a 3-game stretch. Now, as you said, Seattle, Houston, both at the bottom of the standings. North Carolina is technically now below 500. They have 4 wins, 5 draws. They are above the playoff line at the moment, though. But still, it's one of those of like what the Current have done in turn. It's just in the XG shows it as well. What they're doing in terms of limiting chances has been really impressive. And you even go back maybe a couple of games beyond that Angel City game. I think there's maybe like in the last 6 or 7 games, there's maybe been like 3 goals conceded from the actual run of play, not just on a set piece. And I think that for them to have addressed the set piece issue way quicker than the other team across town was impressive. And the fact that they are in such a dominant phase of chance limiting here. That is really kind of impressive. They've been able to do it differently, a little bit less possession per se in the North Carolina game, but even when North Carolina had possession, the fact that they were not doing anything with it. I mean, I think that was one thing that I noted at the end of the match was the fact that the Current certainly lost the possession battle in that game. Uh, it was essentially an even 45-55 split. I say even over, that was what the match looked like, and that's essentially what it was in both halves as well. It wasn't kind of two different across the spectrum possession things, and the Current still were able to absorb that pressure, but never let the Courage actually do anything with it. Dangerous. There was a couple of moments where you're like, "Oh, that was a little close,"
Yeah.
but in reality, they were not allowing anything that was, constituted as a big chance. I mean, even FOTMOB would not count any of their chances that they had as quote unquote big chances, and so it's just been impressive.
Now, the flip side of that is the scoring has dropped. Uh, the first, let's see, the goals scored by Kansas City 5-2, 4-1, 5-3, 1-0, 1. Is that a factor of the better defense, or is it a factor of having Bia being hurt? What do you think?
Um, I mean, I don't think the two correlate in my honest opinion, because I don't think the Current are doing anything different in how they go about the game and the chances that they create in the attack. I just think that the defense itself has gotten used to itself and has worked itself out. And I think the Vlaco's figured a few things out. One of the biggest things I think that they did was put Izzy Rodriguez on the left, and Haley Mace on the right. Um, it's a common sense thing with the flat back four. If you're going to do that, you want to have the natural foots on the outside. Izzy Rodriguez is a phenomenal 1v1 defender.
Yep.
Haley Mace is even better at it, and you put her on that side. I think Haley has the ability, right? You can switch her over to the left, and if their best attacker is the right winger, you can put her on the left. She'll shut down the left, mostly shut down the right winger, right? Ellie, I think, is a really good player, and there's a bright future ahead of her. But there's this thing that we kind of you see with young players where you throw them into the fire and they do well for a while and they keep it, they go and they go and they go, and then once the game starts to look a little too fast for them, you pull them out a little bit, and you let them watch and you let them see and you let them kind of develop and go. And from there, she's able to see, oh, that's what Haley, like Haley Mace is doing this. Here's how
Yeah.
she's managing the two-way aspect of this game. And Haley's not in that game against North Carolina. Haley was phenomenal. That was one of the best games I've seen her play since 2022. I really was impressed with her ability to manage the space behind her. It's the best game I've ever seen her play in the flat back four, for sure. And it was just one of those things of like, the defense itself is working its issues out. And I think the Current have not been as great at finishing some of their chances. I also think Bia is a huge part of it. Just not having that presence to bring players into the game and hold up and she's such a physically dominant person on the ball and off the ball.
And one of the few players who can kind of keep up with Timois when they're on a break.
Correct. And Bia's not even necessarily that fast, but they play fast together.
Right.
And I think that's the other part. And two, she and Timois had this really good connection right away, because they played together in China. Forgotten by all of us and all of our research that we did on the two, the fact that they overlapped in Wuhan together, and played together and won league championships together in China.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, obviously you can see it now on the field, right? It freaking makes sense. But at the same time, we haven't really seen Debinha in that situation yet. And I think so her and Debinha were kind of that front two, and Timois was the central play through person. And the two have to take time to kind of figure each other out. They had no training sessions over the week beforehand. So I'm curious to see what it looks like after a few more training sessions, and maybe once Bia gets back involved, and that might be the front three that we see. If we say one team to go out there and win it all in a game, the front three is probably going to be Dabinia, Bia, and Temwa if they're healthy, right?
Yep.
So then you're looking at those three and you say, all right, how do they work off of each other? And I think that's a very good question for Vlaco to have to find an answer to, and a question that eventually is going to have to be answered by the rest of the league once they get going. But I don't think the goal scoring is a product of them changing the way that they play to be better defensively. I think it's just the fact that B is not in there right now.
Yeah, and I didn't necessarily think it was, but I thought it was a question that should be discussed, is really why I threw it out there that way. But it was partly like, do you think it was because of being more defensive or just because Bia is not out there? I think Bia not being out there is a factor of that. I think there's also a little bit of factor of they were well overachieving their XG in the first few games, and they've underachieved their XG a little bit in these last couple of games. Uh, so 2.5 in Houston, 1.2 at Seattle, 2.9 against North Carolina. So in theory, they should have scored at least one more goal, maybe two.
Mhm.
And they came really close. Timois had some really good chances that went just wide. Just there's lots of opportunities there. All right. Yeah, and going back to the front three, if it's Dabinia, Bia, and Timois, they're three very different players. They're not like the same player, so that you defensively are looking at them in the same way. So as they swap, as they interchange, that's just going to add a lot of challenges to any defense that's trying to stop them.
Yeah. And we saw even to like Michelle Cooper, I thought has looked really good as she gets more and more time. She's really kind of owned in that winger position. I still would love to see her a little bit
Yes.
as much as more as the hold up striker,
Yep.
and that opportunity in the middle of the field. But last year she didn't look comfortable as a winger. She looks comfortable as a winger now.
And a
I think
force to reckon with.
yes, and I was really impressed with the way that Cooper's grown into it. So she's someone that's going to be in the mix for minutes and helping to minimize minute load on players like Bina and Dabinia, who are going to be playing. They're going to be gone this summer and are going to be at the Olympics. They're going to be called up to the national team like Bia was, even though the fact that she's injured, right? Like
Yeah.
there are going to be moments where those players are going to be called upon. And I think to see Michelle Cooper in the way that she was, it was good to see Michelle Prince on the field. She looked semi dangerous, but still has a ways to go. But it was a good first 10, 15 minutes for her. But the way Michelle Cooper has come on since she came back from injury has been mightily impressive in year two, even though there's not really like a stat sheet product of it. She's done the things in the game that they needed her to do in order to win. And I thought that she's provided a really good presence two ways. And that's the thing with this team. Like, I don't know how many times I get it every week. Questions on Facebook, questions on Twitter, questions in my DMs. Where's Kristen Hamilton? Guys, there's so many good players on this team that a player as good as Kristen Hamilton might not be in the pecking order at the moment. And that's kind of the beauty of the roster that they've compiled. Is not, it's not great that Kristen Hamilton has not been involved in match day squads, and same with Lauren, right? Like I'm not celebrating that necessarily.
Right.
I like both of them really a lot. Um, Kristen's a great person, a great player.
Yeah. Love
But
her.
this is what happens when you have a roster like this, is it creates that competition, and you have to be at your best to get those minutes. And everybody pushes everybody, and everybody pushes the overall level higher when you have a healthy competitive roster like this. And that's where the Current are at right now. And it's a tough thing, but for fan favorites and people who are very tied to their players and stuff, but at the same time, the results are what matters. So the results are any business.
When you can have a team where Kristen Hamilton is the least good option to be on the game day roster, that's a really strong roster. And that's something that you, as a fan, you want to have that competition and that level. At the same time, you'd like to see Hammy get out there and score some goals too. So
Mhm.
I'm sure we will see her actually over the summer with some of the players that'll be missing for other competitions.
Correct. We'll see. You have not seen the last of Kristen Hamilton in Kansas City.
No, not yet. Hopefully not for a while. All right. Next up, Racing Louisville.
Yeah.
Not a bad team.
They're just like last year. They tie every game.
Yeah.
I don't get it. They're 1-5-2, Thad. They have a positive goal differential, and they've tied more than half of their games.
Yeah, I don't understand them. I mean, it is weird. It's I mean, they got some good players. Then oh man, I can't think of her name now. Kuno,
Yeah, Uchenna Kanu.
Kanu. I mean, she's been playing well. She's got, I think, got 4 goals.
Savannah
Th
DeMello, well, Taylor Flint,
yeah,
Taylor Korniak, now Flint, of course, after she changed her name for marriage this offseason. But yeah, I mean, it's a good roster. I think it's actually going to be a good game. It's going to be a tight game. Um, they're like I said, they have a positive goal differential, right? They've only conceded 9 goals this year. Katie Lund is a really good goalkeeper for them. Has for the last couple of years has been one of the league leaders in expected goals minus goals against, which is kind of a stat that measures, how many goals you are allowing in versus what the stats and the percentages say you should have allowed. She's been one of the league leaders, not only in saves, but in that over the last couple of years. Some of that, maybe in 22 was due to the fact that they had a really bad defense. But this is a team that statistically has been in a lot of their games, but they haven't had like that winning edge. They're a different team too with Beverly Yanez at the helm. I think it's going to be a really interesting match. Obviously, it's going to be an ion match. That's why we're at the freaking 8:30 p.m. kickoff local time
yep.
um, from home, which I've lamented and complained about as much as I can to the powers that be.
They don't listen to you either, huh?
No, come on. I don't have the money that's telling them where to put their TV time slots. But I'm telling you, I think this is going to be a really good matchup. I'm also kind of looking forward to CPKC truly at night.
Yeah.
Like, the game against St. Louis, we were already over, for the second half and the end of the match, we were already over at Children's Mercy Park. I say the game against St. Louis, the game against Bay FC.
Right.
We were already over at Children's Mercy Park for St. Louis at that point. And then the game, technically a night game against North Carolina, ended at 7 o'clock, and the sun hadn't set by the time I left the stadium.
No, you can
uh
start to see the effect of the lights on that though, because I could see that
yeah,
on some of my photos.
yeah,
But
so it'll be interesting to see kind of the full nighttime atmosphere. There was a notice on the scoreboard during the game or before the match that they're going to shut all the lights off after a goal is scored and do the kind of the Austin FC teal thing. um,
boo.
Notified people of that. So sorry if that's a teaser. However, that's probably coming in the next game. So one, be warned if that's an issue for you, and two, something that we haven't seen yet with the stadium. So I
Yeah.
think the ability to kind of do the late night kickoff and the totally blacked out, play pitch black at kickoff kind of a thing, will provide another interesting dimension that we haven't seen CPKC Stadium at yet.
All right, so I have to do my little 30-second rant of it's ticks me off and it's stupid to turn off the lights when you have a goal scored because that is the best shots, the celebrations, not the actual kick of the ball, it's the celebrations, and you turn off the lights and make it harder for the photographers to get the shot that you want to be able to put on your Instagram post later. So I think it's insane. I think it's stupid, and I know they're going to do it because they're friends with the Austin owner, which actually is one of the worrisome things. But I think Spurry about lost it when I said that. Um, anything else that we need to cover before we go?
Did you just tell me that they're friends with Anthony Precourt?
That's what I was told.
Interesting.
Uh, uh,
I
yeah,
mean, the Yeti connection, it makes sense, I guess. Yeti is the front jersey sponsor for Austin FC and the sponsor of Video System Review at
so because
CBC.
I'd asked this question at one point before the season, are they going to do that stupid turn off the lights thing? And it said, well, considering they're friends with the guy who owns Austin, and they modeled after some of what they were doing after what Austin was doing, They said yes. So I was like, okay, that's disappointing on so many fronts. But and again, I know why fans sometimes like this, but I'm just telling you, it hurts some other aspects of the stuff. So
I still
I don't
can't
know.
believe
I'll whine about this every so often.
I still can't believe I've had to mention Anthony Precourt on an NWSL podcast.
Well, I didn't just say his name for that reason.
You can't escape it though. That's the Austin owner.
I know who it is. That's evil. That's one reason I hate Austin. And for
Uh,
anybody who doesn't know, Anthony Precourt tried to screw over the Columbus Crew and move them to Austin. You can look up that story. Saved by the Columbus fans. Great job. And then he gets a free expansion team. So anyway,
yeah, Columbus got some trophies out of it though.
th- they had to fight for it though. Anyway, all right. This is a NWSL podcast. Well, it's a KC Current podcast, but I know we
Let's start
ramble.
the name of Anthony Precourt on an NWSL podcast. Oh
Well, you
boy.
kept dropping mentions of the team across town. So, I mean, why not? All right. Anything we need to cover in the next 1 minute
I
since we're
think
running out of time?
everything that.
All right. Uh, thank you for joining me, and it was a pleasure as always.
It's a pleasure as always. It's
Uh,
better when
we'll,
we're not doing post game in my car at a gas station in Omaha on Zoom, but trust me,
yeah,
this is much more entertaining than that.
yeah. Jeff asking, "Will you have any questions to that?" No, I haven't even seen the game yet, man. Sorry. Actually, finding a gas station that was their gas pumps worked. That was a challenge also. But hey,
It's a challenge. At least Vlaco got a kick out of it.
yep,
Vlaco did think it was hilarious
yep.
to see us on the screen like that in a gas station in Omaha.
And hey, at least that was a game that a team could win. All right. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. And sorry we ramble sometimes, but hey, at least have a little fun with it. And hopefully I'll have some additional guests on the pod in the future. Appreciate it, and thank you all for listening. And we are out.